Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint. Chapter 20. Episode 5, Shadow Keeper, 2. The party fought well. It was actually a little bit surprising. In particular, Lee Hyun-sung and Young Hee-won, who stepped forward with me, were very influential. The battle composition naturally became the three of us in front with the other three in the rear. Less than a minute after the battle began, a few ground rats were stuck on the ground with their necks pierced. Lee Hyun-sung overpowered another ground rat, wiped the sweat on his forehead and said, "I think I can live." Once they raised their overall stats, the human race wasn't that weak. Even so, Lee Hyun-sung's mentality was very special in this world. A normal human couldn't be so nonchalant when encountering monsters. There was a reason why he got the name of Steel Sword in the future. However, the more amazing person was Young Hee-won. The pattern is simpler than I thought. Maybe it was due to the kendo skill, but every time her sword stretched out, the ground rat was cut somewhere on their legs or tail. Hap! It was a case where Young Hee-won invested most of her coins into strength. Her endurance declined due to it, but the power of one blow was better than I thought. Wike! Her sword moved in a terrifying manner through the air. Damn, I lost one. Please. Her voice trembled as she spoke. Her only weakness was that her stamina was low, so her endurance fell. Grr. The ground rats who moved between the party members were moderately smart. After succeeding in scattering the ranks, they ran towards the opponent, who seemed the weakest, using a hunter's instincts. Leave it to me. However, the ground rats didn't know that they had picked the wrong opponent. Piak. A blunt instrument thrown by Lee Giliang's hands struck the head of a ground rat. The impact was lacking because he was a child, but it was enough. The others could help him finish it. Pyuk! Yu Senga's spear pierced the body of the ground rat. The ground rat twisted several times. Yu Senga made a confused expression, but she didn't remove her hand from the spear. The ground rat lost its energy and fell down. I honestly thought it would be difficult for Yu Senga to adapt, but I was really surprised. Usually, it was normal to panic like Han Myung-go. Standing over here. As the people were struggling, one person was hiding in the rear. He couldn't even hide properly and was bleeding near the shins. I pierced the last ground rat with the thorn and the surroundings became quiet. I shook the blood off the thorn and looked at everyone. Everyone suffered from minor abrasions except for Han Myung-go, but there were no major injuries. It was a great first victory. Yu Senga and Lee Giliang relaxed and sat down, while Lee Hyun-sung stabbed his spear into the ground and wiped at the sweat on his forehead. Young Hee-won lamented as she counted the number of ground rats in the vicinity. Dokja SSI, how many did you take care of? 4 of them. Che, I killed 2. I got 3. My pride was somehow hurt when I heard Lee Hyun-sung's proud declaration. There was only one difference despite my stats. I used a skill and looked at Lee Hyun-sung's attributes window. Plus. Character information. Name, Lee Hyun-sung. Age, 28 years old. Constellation sponsor, Master of Steel. Private attribute, soldier who turned a blind eye to injustice, general. Exclusive skills, bayonet skills LV2, camouflage LV1, patience LV1, sense of justice LV1, weapons training LV2. Stigma, Great Mountain Push LV1. Overall stats, stamina LV12, strength LV9, agility LV9, magic power LV6. Overall evaluation, the moment of the attribute evolution is gradually approaching. The person's trust in you is considerable. The sponsor behind him is wary towards you. Asterisk starter pack is currently applied. The starter pack. This was why he was strong. The Master of Steel seemed to quite like Lee Hyun-sung. The starter pack was a coin package that could be used when the average overall stats of the incarnation was less than level 10. It was a good item that allowed you to learn weapons training, a useful skill in the beginning, while raising the level of the overall stats by 1. Considering the fact that most incarnations were being exploited for nothing, Lee Hyun-sung was lucky to receive the starter pack. Dokja SSI, your complexion doesn't look good. No. I was just thinking for a moment. Now I was a little bit envious. Well, I had the money to buy it. I didn't buy it. My average stats exceeded level 10, so buying it would only damage me. Damn, I opened the Dakibi bag a bit early. Let's gather up the ground rats. We need to prepare today's food. By the way, how will we cook it? We can't eat it like this. We can't eat it now, but there will be a way. I guessed I answered too calmly. There was silence among my party members. Lee Hyunsung was the first one to open his mouth. Excuse me, I would like to ask you one thing. Yes? Dr. Sesai, perhaps, do you know something about this situation? Whoops, I made a mistake. That. Suddenly, I remembered the regressors in the novel I read, followed by Yu Jonghyuk's words. It was like this. The feeling of a regressor. Usually, these types of things happen to a regressor. Some replies came to mind. I could shamelessly say that it was a hunch, or I could lie like Yu Jonghyuk. The constellation's secretive plotter is anticipating your choice. A few constellations are anticipating your answer. But from a reader's point of view, the best answer was ugh. It was to create a situation where I didn't need to say anything. The constellation, secretive plotter, nods at your choice. There is still one left. Young Hee-won shouted and Lee Hyunsung ran. However, the action of the hidden ground rats was faster than anyone else. It was much bigger than the other creatures. Save me. It dragged Han Myung-go into a tunnel by one of his legs. The nearest Yu Sengef swung her spear, but the situation got worse because Han Myung-go held onto her. Grab this. Lee Hyunsung stretched out the handle of his spear, but it only hit the ground. The ground rat and the two people had already disappeared into the ground. The constellation, prisoner of the golden headband, resents this frustrating person. Young Hee-won burst out. Ah, I knew I was going to get cancer because of that uncle. I'm sorry. I was too late. Lee Hyunsung spoke in a sad voice. I tapped his shoulder to show it was okay. No one could have done anything. Should we chase after them? I looked at the hole where they had disappeared. It wasn't an ordinary hole. There was a touch of energy around it. The darkness gave off a gloomy feeling. I retreated to the back and turned on my smartphone. There was only 5% battery remaining. At dawn, I exchanged one battery charge for food with a person from the marginalized group. Your reading speed has increased due to the effect of the exclusive attribute. Shortly afterwards, I was able to find the desired passage. The edge of darkness is the habitat of the ground rats and is a type of subspace emitted from the dark root. The ground rats that breath in black ether instead of oxygen don't grow naturally unless they are near the edge of darkness. It was a fact that I knew roughly, but it was meaningful to review it. That's right. This was the entrance to the edge of darkness. I read about it and put the smartphone in my pocket. Dr. Sesai. Lee Hyunsung was looking at me with a frustrated expression. I nodded. We will enter. Ah, then. But it's very dangerous to enter with a lot of people. Lee Hyunsung SSI and Young Hee-won SSI will wait here at the boundary. If something happens, I will give you a signal. The startled Young Hee-won asked. Surely, you don't intend to go with only Gil-young? Gil-young's ability will be helpful in pursuing them. The moment she tried to strongly resist, I raised a hand and called to Lee Hyunsung. Lee Hyunsung SSI. Young Hee-won SSI isn't in a good condition, so please take care of her. Lee Hyunsung seemed to realize something. I understand. Wait a minute. I am fine. Young Hee-won, confidence is good, but don't be reckless. Young Hee-won's breathing was uneven. She wasn't completely healed from the poisonous fog. I left the two people and entered the hole with Lee Gil-young. It was obviously a hole that was dug down in a vertical slope. But as soon as we entered, we could stand as if gravity was in effect. It was due to the magic power emitted by the edge of darkness. This way. The darkness was so deep that I couldn't see anything, so I could only move forward with Lee Gil-young. Black ether had the property of absorbing light, making a flashlight meaningless. If Lee Gil-young's ability diverse communication wasn't available, I might have to use coins again. Excuse me, Hyung. Lee Gil-young called out to me. Did you do it on purpose? What? When that uncle grabbed Nuna and Ajusi, you let it go. I had a moment of hesitation. In the darkness, Li Gilyang's fingertips were strange. Before I could ask how he knew, Li Gilyang spoke. At that time, I was looking at Hyung's face. He was watching me even in those short moments. A very scary kid. It was no good hiding from a person who was so quick. Yes, that's right. The answer was terrible and a message bomb was set off in my head. Indeed, this was a spectacle for the constellations. The constellations of absolute good frown at your cruelty. The constellation's secretive plotter is pressing you with shining eyes. Why did you do that? Because of the habit of the ground rats. I decided to answer honestly. The ground rats have a habit of keeping their catches in the same place as their treasure. It isn't just food. Many things that seem rare are gathered. For example, an item. However, the paths are so complicated that it can't be found unless I follow their path directly. Li Gilyang was silent for a moment. I continued speaking. I expected them to take Han Myunggo. I didn't expect him to grab onto you Sangha. Then your purpose isn't to save Nuna or Ajusi, it is the items? Yes. Are you disappointed? Nope. Li Gilyang's small hand gripped my finger tightly. Hyung shouldn't lie. If Hyung was such a person, you wouldn't have saved me on the subway. I believe in you. Li Gilyang didn't act like a child, but he was still a child. Li Gilyang didn't know. To be mature and to be an adult were completely different things. Some constellations are touched to tears. 200 coins have been sponsored. In this world, there were mean adults who would take advantage of such maturity. The hole was longer than I thought and we had to go downwards for quite a long time. Hyung. Yes. Hyung, are you a god? What? Or the main character? Children sometimes asked sharp questions. It was because they lived in a world where stories and reality weren't clearly distinguished. Li Gilyang didn't know exactly what his question meant. I'm not a main character. Rather, I always envy the main character. But you still know something about this world? I thought for a moment before replying. That's right. Then I'll ask you one thing. I will answer it if I can. Once we clear all these scenarios, can we make a wish? Wish? I was a bit confused. Usually there is a reward at the end of these stories. At the end of this story, is there something like that? In the darkness, Li Gilyang's breathing was trembling. Li Gilyang's expression when he saw his dead mother suddenly came to mind. Those who adapted to this world suffered from it in different ways. Some were crazy, some were fanatics and some had irrational optimism. Yes, there is. I was grateful that this place was dark. It was because Li Gilyang couldn't see my face right now. We are almost there, Hyung. The surrounding black ether was shrinking rapidly. It was evidence that dark root was nearby. I tensed up and gripped the thorn. A few constellations are holding their breaths. I heard the sound of the ground rat somewhere in the ground. As the sound got closer, the sense of space expanded rapidly. I saw a light. In the darkness, as if someone had lit a fire. Then I saw a tattered box beyond that light. The moment I was convinced that I had come to the right place, messages rang in my ears. The sub-scenario has been updated. You have entered the ground rat's treasure trove. TL note, some of Lee Hyansung's skill levels are less than the first time his attribute window was checked. Probably an author mistake. Hyung equals term that males use for a male older than them. Nuna equals term that males use for a female older than them. Ajusi equals middle-aged man, uncle, Mr., etc.